The house looked almost the same after all these years: white shutters, weather-worn wood, and the faint smell of jasmine from the garden that still grew wild near the porch. But when I stepped inside, time collapsed like an old photograph folding in half. The sound of my shoes on the wooden floor echoed through the hollow corridors, and that's when I saw her, standing at the top of the staircase, framed by the golden afternoon light. Her hair was longer now, her eyes softer but sadder. And in a voice that trembled between disbelief and longing, she whispered, "You came back for me, didn't you?" Before we dive deeper into this story of love, loss, and second chances, if you believe that kindness can heal old wounds and that sometimes people do come back when it matters most, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kind of Hearts. Because this story is one of those rare ones that might just change how you see forgiveness. Her name was Sharon Vale. She was my best friend's older sister, the girl who always seemed one step ahead of the world. When I was 17 and naive, I used to visit their house almost every day to hang out with my best friend, Theo. He was reckless and loud, everything I wasn't. But Sharon, she was quiet thunder. She had this calm that wrapped around everyone, even in the chaos of her family's broken pieces. Back then, the Vallas were barely holding together. Their father drank too much, their mother was gone more than she was home, and Theo just laughed it all off. But Sharon took care of everyone. She cooked, cleaned, tutored Theo, and still somehow managed to smile like she carried the sun in her chest. And I'd, young, awkward, and too afraid to speak my heart, watched her from the edges of every room, pretending not to notice how her laughter made the dust dance in the air. The last time I saw her before everything fell apart was the night Theo crashed his car. We were supposed to go to the lake that evening, but Theo had been drinking, angry at his father again. I tried to stop him, but he threw the keys at me and stormed off. Sharon ran out into the rain, barefoot, screaming after him. Her voice still haunts me. Hours later, we found the wreckage. Theo didn't survive. After the funeral, I couldn't face her. I blamed myself. Her brother was gone, and the silence between us became unbearable. So I left. I moved away, changed numbers, buried the guilt under the noise of college and work and time. But guilt doesn't age, it only deepens. It's been 10 years since that night. 10 years since I looked into her eyes. And yet, when I received a letter from an old neighbor saying the Vale house was being sold, something in me stirred. Maybe it was cowardice disguised as closure, or maybe it was the hope that forgiveness might still be waiting at the top of those stairs. So I drove back to the town I swore I'd never return to. The sun was gentle that afternoon, spilling over the fields in waves of gold. The air smelled like memory. When I pushed open the door of the old Vale house, dust motes drifted through the light like forgotten stories. The house had been empty for years, but someone had been cleaning it recently. There were fresh flowers on the table, and the curtains were drawn open. That's when I heard footsteps upstairs. Then I saw her. Sharon. Time had reshaped her. There were fine lines beneath her eyes, and her posture was no longer that of a girl holding the world together, but of a woman who had already been broken and rebuilt. And when she whispered those words, "You came back for me, didn't you?" something inside me cracked open. I wanted to speak, to explain, to say all the words that had burned in silence for a decade. But my voice betrayed me. All I could manage was a trembling. I didn't know you'd still be here." She smiled sadly. "You didn't think I'd wait, did you?" I didn't know how to answer. She walked down the stairs slowly, each step creaking like an old wound reopening. She stopped at the bottom, close enough for me to see that she still wore the same silver locket, Theo's locket. I had given it to him the summer before the accident. "I come here sometimes," she said quietly. "I couldn't sell it. Not yet. Too many ghosts." We sat in the living room, sunlight shifting between us like something fragile and holy. She made tea, still with honey instead of sugar, the way she used to, and we talked about everything and nothing. About the town, about how she teaches music now, about how life goes on even when you don't want it to. And then came the silence. The kind that strips the air of sound and fills it with everything unspoken. "I blamed you for a long time," she finally said, her voice trembling. "When Theo died, I thought if you had just stayed, if you had stopped him harder, maybe he'd still be here. But then I realized you were just a boy. You were hurting too. I never told you that." Her honesty hit harder than any accusation ever could. Tears burned behind my eyes. "I blamed myself," I whispered. "Every day. I thought coming back might what?" she interrupted gently, might make it right, I said. But maybe it's too late. She looked at me for a long moment. Then, softly, she said, it's never too late to come back for the right reasons. Outside, the afternoon light shifted to gold. The house seemed warmer, less like a tomb and more like a memory being healed. Over the next few weeks, I stayed in town, helping her fix up the house. We painted the walls, repaired the steps, and laughed at how nothing ever quite worked right. Some days, we didn't talk about the past at all. Other days, it was all we talked about. One evening, as we packed old boxes in Theo's room, I found his notebook under the floorboard. Inside were pages of sketches, drawings of the lake, the house, and us. Me and Saren. The last page had words written in shaky pen, tell her he loved her too. Just never knew how. My hands trembled as I read it. Saren was standing behind me, tears welling in her eyes. He never told me that, she whispered. He never told me either, I said softly. But maybe this was his way of forgiving us both. We stood there for a long time, the setting sun painting the room an amber light, and for the first time in 10 years, I felt the weight lift slowly, gently, like a bird finally taking flight. Days turned into weeks, and something unspoken began to bloom between us. Not romance, not yet. Something quieter, like trust learning to breathe again. She would smile more often, sometimes catch herself and blush, and I found myself lingering longer than I planned. But one morning, I woke to find her sitting on the porch, looking out at the dawn. She had the letter in her hands, the same letter that brought me back here. You know, she said softly, when I first saw you standing there, I thought maybe I was dreaming. Maybe Theo sent you back. Maybe he did, I said with a faint smile. She turned to me then, eyes glistening. Or maybe you came back because you needed to forgive yourself. And maybe I needed to forgive you, too. I didn't answer. I just nodded, because sometimes silence is the only language that makes sense. That afternoon, we finally packed the last of the boxes. The house felt empty again, but this time, it wasn't haunted, it was at peace. We stood by the stairs, where she had first seen me. She touched the wooden railing, tracing the same spot where Theo had carved his initials as a kid. Do you ever think we meet people twice in life? She asked suddenly. Once to break us, and once to heal us? I looked at her then, the light wrapping around her like forgiveness itself. Maybe, I said. Maybe that's what this is. As I turned to leave, she stopped me. Her hand found mine, warm and steady. You came back for me, didn't you? She whispered again, her voice breaking just slightly, and this time, I didn't hesitate. Yes, I said. I came back for you.